I guess. Okay. Okay, so yeah, you can also use cross training to improve aspects of your paddling strengths and weaknesses. A classic one is if you're out on the water and you see people that are bigger and stronger than you, and you feel like, gee, I wish I had a little more strength. Then certainly going into the gym and lifting some weights is going to improve your strength. If you're already big and strong, but you're feeling tired at the end of a session, or people are leaving you later on, then maybe some endurance training, either running, cycling, something like that, is going to help build your endurance. And let me see, I think I did a few. See if I can share here. Yeah, here we go. Okay, see if I can get that to come up here. So another reason that you may want to cross train is be ready for a race. Perhaps you've got an event coming up in a couple of weeks, and whether it's weather or you're traveling and you're not able to get out in the boat, and you want to maintain some fitness. So those are all good reasons to cross train. And once you've decided, okay, I'm not paddling, I'm going to do something else, the question becomes, what are you going to do? And there's a few questions to answer on that. First one being, what you think you need. If you certainly, if you want to build strength, you probably should go in the gym and work on some strength building exercises. If you're trying to build endurance, you want to do that. But a second thing to consider is what activities you have available. And it may be that some people can do certain things and others can't. One would be if you've got snow on the ground, well, maybe you can go cross-country skiing. You can and that's assuming that you know how to ski and you've got appropriate trails or a place to do it. That's something that you can do for cross training. Other people may find that they don't have snow or they don't have an opportunity to ski, so that's not an option for them. Swimming, if you've got access to an indoor swimming pool, that's a good cross training in the winter. So it's kind of what you've got to do available to you other than getting out in your boat. And the final one is doing what you enjoy. You want to, paddling to me is fun, and I like my cross training to be fun. So if you don't enjoy what you're doing, then it's probably better to find something else that you do enjoy. You'll be more enthused and better in shape for it. And I guess if you want, I'm not sure the best way to run this. If people want to ask questions, I guess you can unmute yourself and ask a question, or otherwise I'll just carry on and ramble on. So, okay, well, I guess no one's speaking up yet, so we're just early in the call, so I'll go ahead and just carry on. As far as the activities that you do, there's a lot of different things that you can do. I'll just I'm going to try to share another thing here. So yeah, so here's, hopefully this will pop up here. One of them, probably one of the easiest activities that people can do is running. That really requires no special equipment. All you need is a pair of running shoes and perhaps some appropriate clothing for whatever the weather's like outside. But that can be done pretty much anytime, anywhere. I know when I was growing up in Michigan, I would often go out for runs in the wintertime, even with snow on the ground or on the roads or sidewalks. As long as you dress appropriately and have a good tread on your shoes, you're usually okay. Certainly, strength training in the gym is a really good cross-training activity. That's going to build your strength. If you want, I can go ahead and talk a little bit about that. There's a number of things that you can be doing in the gym, and depends on, again, what you enjoy doing, whether it's a home gym, whether you join a gym, and what sort of facilities they have, free weights, machines, those sorts of things. But I'll show you just a few of the basic exercises that you may want to think about that can help for cross training and training for paddling. The first one, any ideas? The most popular paddling exercise that most people tend to do is pull-ups. And that's pretty simple. Just find a bar, grab onto it, and pull your body up to the bar there. That, I would say, worldwide, that is probably the most common exercise that paddlers tend to do for strength training. It really works most of your paddling muscles, your lats, shoulders, arms, biceps, forearms. A lot of your upper body is worked with doing pull-ups. So that's a good cross training exercise to do. That being said, not everybody can do a pull-up, and depending on your strength and your weight, you may find that it's difficult to lift yourself up to the bar or to do multiple reps at pull-ups. So in that case, a good exercise, if you have access to it, is a lat pull-down machine, which is really common in most gyms. And that's just instead of pulling yourself up to the bar, you're pulling the bar down to yourself. You can set the resistance by the stack of weights that's connected to the cable, and you can make it as easy or as hard as you want. So again, that's really the same as pull-ups, just allows you to adjust the intensity and how strenuous it is. You can even go more than your weight with this scenario. You can stack on, if you weigh 160 pounds, you can set it at 180 pounds and just hold yourself, put your knees under the pads, and even do more than your own weight sometimes. So that's a good way to do pull-ups. Another really popular exercise for paddlers is bench row. That's where you're laying down on a bench and pulling a barbell up to the bench. That does require some specialized equipment. Not all gyms have this, but there are other similar exercises. I know that some of the Nautilus machines have a similar motion where you're sitting upright and you pull some bars towards your body. You can do cable pulley rows where you're sitting down and pulling a handle towards your chest. And you can also do dumbbell rows where you've got a bench, you put one knee on the bench and a hand on that side, and then pull a dumbbell up to your body. That's a really good, it works one side at a time, similar to paddling, and you can even bring a little bit of your core rotation into the motion too. So that's another good exercise for paddlers to do. And of course, bench press. If you ever go to the gym, usually the first thing that people ask when they hear you go to the gym is, how much can you bench press? And I actually feel that bench presses are probably a bit overrated for paddling. I think things like pull-ups and bench rows are more important. But certainly bench press is a very good overall upper body exercise. It works your shoulders, your chest, your triceps. So the pull-ups and bench row, that's working primarily your pulling muscles. This is working your pushing muscles for that top hand, top arm. So it is a good exercise for your quiver. Pretty much any upper body exercise is going to help your paddling. You want to build strength, and if you go to a gym, you can either read a book on weightlifting or talk to a trainer at the gym, and they'll give you a good group of upper body exercise you can do to improve your upper body strength. Core strength is also really important. Stomach crunches, planks, those sorts of things will build your abs. You can do some rotational exercises. There are some specialized machines that are rotation machines. This gentleman here, he's just grabbing a pulley and pulling it across his body. And it looks like it's working pretty well. It seems to be pretty fit there. So it must be a good exercise. I'll point out to some of you people a slight flaw in this gentleman's technique. I'm not sure if anybody can see it there. But what he seems to be doing is he's got his arms out here, and he's rotating essentially from his shoulders. But really, for proper paddling technique, what you want to do is you want to rotate your core. So that's turning your whole body this way and back this way. So this way, I'm actually using more of my core, and that's the way you want to be paddling. I oftentimes tell people when you're paddling, you want your paddle shaft to be relatively parallel to your chest. So as my paddle shaft is moving across, my core is rotating along with it. Same with this exercise, I'm rotating my core along with that pulley rather than just going back and forth with my shoulders. So not sure if that makes sense to people, but that's a good exercise to work on your rotation. And let's see, another good core exercise is back hyperextensions. That's where you've got your legs held and you're using your lower back muscles to pull yourself up. I found this is really good for strengthening your lower back. And even at times when I've been a little bit sore in my lower back, maybe I bent over and picked something up, my back's a bit sore, I found I can typically still do these exercises that does not seem to aggravate the back muscles. So it is a really good exercise for building strength in your lower back and just general core strength. And certainly when I was at my peak training for sprint racing, almost all of the exercises I did in the gym were upper body exercises. I really didn't do much for my legs. And in hindsight, I probably would have been good to do a little bit of leg work. I mean, most of your power is coming from your upper body, but certainly doing some squats or other leg work is good for overall strength. Especially, I know we've got a few C1 canoeists on here, and they are using more hips and more legs in the stroke. So that's going to help you there. And I am starting to incorporate a little more leg work into the weightlifting that I do now for a couple of reasons. One of them being that rather than, I still want to be fast at paddling, but I also want to have good overall health. And so I think that having a good balanced routine where you're exercising your entire body, your legs, as well as your upper body and core is good for overall health. And I'm also starting to do quite a bit more cycling now. And so a little bit of leg strength, I feel like that helps my cycling to build a little strength there. I'm not trying to build big, massive legs. If you're paddling to have huge bodybuilder thighs, that's extra weight you've got to carry in your boat. So you don't need to go overboard with it. But certainly I think some lower body strength along with your upper body strength is good to have. So I'll go ahead and get that off of there now. So that's just a real quick overview of some exercises that you might do in the gym. There's a lot more. I mean, this is just a very small subset just to get you thinking of things that you might do. I did see somebody popped up. I'm not sure where I saw something. Somebody asked a question about a VersaClimber. And I have used a VersaClimber years ago. One of the gyms I had one of those, and I would often jump on that and use that as a warm-up to my weightlifting routine. So that is another good cross-training activity. And like I say, there's a lot of different things that you can do for cross-training. Let's see if I can pull this back up now. Here we go. I'll share this. So yeah, here I've talked about running. That's pretty basic, as long as running works for you. For some people, maybe you don't like to run, or I have problems with my ankles and feet, so I don't do a lot of running. I used to do more when I was younger, but now it seems to bother me more, and I'd rather do other activities like cycling or other things in place of running. But that's a good one. Gyms and weights. Cross-country skiing. I'm not sure if we've got any cross-country skiers on this call, but that if you've got snow, then that is a really good exercise to do. It's really it's not the same motion as paddling, but it's bringing up a lot of the same. It does work a lot of the same muscles, and it's very aerobic. Here I am in my younger days doing some cross-country skiing. I used to do more of it when I was growing up in Michigan. Not quite as much now, but that's a good sport. I know that the Scandinavians, a lot of the kayakers there do, when the water freezes over or it's too cold to get on the water, then Nordic or cross-country skiing becomes their sport. I know that Knut Holman, who is probably one of the best K1 paddlers of all time in Olympic sprint racing, rumor has it that one year in the Vasaloppet, he beat Bjorn Dali, who is probably the greatest cross-country skier ever. Evidently, Knut Holman beat him in the Vasaloppet, which is, I think I've heard it's a pretty flat ski race. And it's also a classic race where you're not skating. And so he was able to get in there and use his upper body strength with double pulling. And he beat he didn't win the race, but I heard that he beat a lot of very good cross-country skiers. So that's certainly another exercise that you can look at for your cross training. So I'll bring up some more here that, again, another good one is swimming. That is, again, that tends to use a lot of the same muscles that paddling does, a lot of upper body strength. So that's going to build some upper body strength, and it's certainly going to build your aerobic fitness. So if you've got access to a swimming pool in the wintertime, then that's a good exercise. And from there, I'll move on to paddling ergometer. I'm not sure who's got access to paddling ergometer, but if you do, that's going to certainly be the best way to duplicate the paddling. It's using all of the same muscles, and it's using the same technique. You're going to get aerobic benefits. You're going to get your the same paddling muscles exercise. So that is as close as you're going to get to actually being in the boat. And there's various models out there. Some of them are better for kayak stroke. Some of them are better for canoe stroke. I think some of them are adaptable back and forth between canoe and kayak. But that is a good option for you. It is, especially earlier on, I mentioned trying to be race ready. If you are someplace where you can't get on the water and you've got a race coming up in a week or two, that is going to be the best way to prepare yourself for an event that's coming up very shortly, because you will be working all those same muscles and the same fitness that you would get in the boat. So that's a good way to do it. Another type of ergometer that you can do is a rowing ergometer. And that may be more available to some of you. The paddling ergometers are really specialized equipment. So unless you invest and buy one yourself or happen to belong to a canoe club that has one, you may not have access to a paddling ergometer, but pretty much any health club or gym is likely to have some rowing machines. And so that's another good cross-training exercise. And it really kind of depends what you're after with your cross-training, whether you're better off on a rowing ergometer or a paddling ergometer. If you're really trying to train specifically for paddling, then certainly a paddling ergometer is going to duplicate that a lot better. However, if you're just after overall fitness, or you're trying to improve your aerobic capacity, you may actually find that you're just as good or better with a rowing ergometer. And that, from what I've heard, the two sports that build the highest aerobic capacity are cross-country skiing and rowing. And that's because they use your entire body is used in both of those sports. If you take a stroke like paddling, even though you're using your lower body somewhat trying to get good leg action, the bulk of your power is coming from the core and upper body, and less so from your legs. Other sports like cycling, you're really using your legs. Cycling or running, you're using your legs to a very large extent, but not so much your upper body. And rowing and cross-country skiing both are utilizing both your legs and upper body at the same time. So that could be, a rowing ergometer could be a very good way if you're trying to improve your aerobic capacity. So it kind of depends on your individual situation when you're cross training. If you're trying to sort of get away from the boat for a few months and do something else and come back to it with a fresh start, then maybe a rowing ergometer is a little bit different and makes it seem a little fresher than just going from a kayak to a kayak ergometer back into a kayak again. But if you do have specific needs where you've got a race coming up, or if you have a very long winter, if you live in northern Canada or Alaska or someplace where there's maybe you're off the water for 4 or 5 months, then certainly using a paddling ergometer is going to be a way to keep your paddling fitness up relatively well with that. Any questions? Anybody, if you want to unmute yourself and ask a question about ergometers, about different types of cross-training activities that you might want to do.
I'm curious if there's a certain rule of thumb you use for recommending kayak specific cross training versus non-kayak specific cross training. Like, is there a level of competitiveness or time out of boat that you use to recommend one versus the other?
Yeah, I would say it's probably time out of boat and how close you are to the competition season. So if you've got a very long winter or someplace you can't get in the boat for 4 or 5 months, that's a long time to be away from using those paddling muscles in the motion that you want to be using them. So in that case, I would say a paddling ergometer, specific paddling ergometer is going to give you a big benefit. And certainly if you have an event coming up sometime in the next few weeks or even the next month, then using a kayak, and you can't get on the water, then a kayak ergometer is going to be the best way to duplicate what you're going to be doing. It'll be much easier to transition back into the boat. If you've got say only 2 or 3 months where you're off the water, then it probably doesn't make that much difference. I think it's a 6 of one, half dozen of the other. It's maybe personal preference. The rowing ergometer is going to give you probably a little bit more aerobic base, and although the kayak ergometer or canoe ergometer is going to use more of the specific muscles that are used in your training. So I really haven't spent that much time on kayak ergometers. When I was competing in sprint racing, which is when I was in sprint racing, which is when it would be of the biggest value to me. Back in the 80s and early 90s, the ergometers were just starting to get developed. And the very first ergometers were actually bicycle ergometers that had been adapted for paddling. And it seemed like in order to work them well, you had to almost do like a very round stroke to work efficiently with it. And I felt at that time, that it affected my technique more than it helped my training. And so I opted to not use them at that point. It was just so instead I made an effort on the important years to actually find warm weather where I could get back into the boat to try to minimize the time that I was out. So hopefully that answered your question there. And I think we've got a few questions here on the chat. Let's see if I can figure out how to get the chat open here. Not sure how to get the chat tab open. I'm kind of new to this Google Meet, so I'm still learning how to. Let's see, that's the captions.
If you just click on the little message box in the bottom right, it'll pop up along the right-hand side of your screen.
Okay, here's oh wait, no, it's details. Let's see, so show everyone. Let's see, what do we got? Oh yeah, here we go, chat. Okay, here we go. Okay, yeah, so it looks like there's okay, yeah, here's several things on here. Oh yeah, I guess I'll just go down some of these questions that are here in the chat box. One says, are these exercises somewhat like 3 sets of 10, something like that? And typically that's what I'll do when I'm training. I'll usually do anywhere from 8 to 12 reps in a set. And then it depends on how many exercises you're doing and how much time you've got available. I usually do most exercises, I only do 1 to 2 sets per exercise and then move on to something else. When I was training at a higher level, I would probably do 3 sets per exercise. Now that I'm a little older and maybe not quite as serious about my gym training, I may only do 1 or 2 sets. And so it really depends on how much time you're spending in the gym and sort of how many different exercises. If you're doing 15 different exercises, and then 3 each of those is a pretty long workout in the gym. If you're taking some rest between each set, if you're only doing 6 or 7 exercises, then certainly doing 3 sets of each is easier. And I tend to do the ones I feel are more important, like pull-ups and bench row, and some of those I may do a few extra sets of those, and stuff like bicep curls. Occasionally I'll do a set of those, and that's not going to be your primary exercise. So if I'm doing bicep curls, I'd probably only do a single set of those. So yeah, but typically 8 to 12. Sometimes I'll mix it up. Sometimes I'll stack a little more weight on and try to see how much I can lift with fewer reps, maybe 5 to 7 reps. Other times I'll try to do 20 or 30 reps at a higher pace, and just to mix it up. But I think for most strength training, generally, roughly 10 reps is probably a good amount to do. Now here's one question here I see. How much of winter training would you focus on building aerobic capacity at lower heart rate versus sprint work? Okay, that again, that's an individual. It kind of depends on what you're training for. If you're training for endurance, if you're going to go out and do something that's 10K or 10, 15 miles at a time, then you'll probably be doing most of your training at a more aerobic conditioning. I'll make another person here joining in. Let me get them on this call. So if you're a 200-meter specialist, then perhaps doing some sprint work even in the off season, that may help keep you in touch with going at maximum intensity. For most people, kind of the classic way of training is that off season is a time to build strength and a time to build aerobic endurance. And so those are typically what's stressed more in the off season. And then as you're getting more in the heart of your competitive season, closer to the races, that's when you'd start doing more sprints, more higher intensity sessions. That being said, when I was sprint racing, I think I am naturally better at endurance than I am at sprinting. So even in the off season, if I was on the water, I would occasionally go out and do some really intense short practice my stars to do some short sprints just to try to keep touch, because I did feel like my weakness was more sprinting speed than endurance. So if you're one of those persons, then certainly doing a few sprints in the off season will probably help you. Okay, here's another question here. Yeah, training on the erg. Do you reckon sprints, distance, or maximize resistance? I would say probably similar to paddling on the water. I typically, on a lot of my on-water sessions, I'm doing some sort of intervals, unless I'm out doing downwind. If I'm out going downwind, then I'm usually just working with the waves and sprinting when I think I need to catch a wave, and trying to rest when I can. sort of letting the conditions rule my intensity. But if I'm on flat water, if I'm on a lake or a calm river, and I'm trying to get in a good workout, I'll often do some sort of intervals. And for aerobic intervals, generally you're going anywhere from 2 minutes to 20 minutes in length. A lot of them are probably 4 to 8 minutes in length. So doing a series of repeats at, say, 6 minutes or 4 minutes or 8 minutes, something like that, I find for me, I'm able to build more aerobic capacity that way than I am just going out and paddling at a steady rate. And that's because with intervals, if you only have to work hard for 4 minutes or 6 minutes, generally it's easy to push yourself close to your aerobic capacity. If you're trying to work hard for 60 minutes, then oftentimes you'll find that after 5 or 10 minutes, you start slowing down and you're not pushing yourself as hard. So I do think on an ergometer, doing some sort of sprints is good to do. It's also because for me, ergometers tend to be a bit boring. If I'm outside doing something, it's much more enjoyable. You've got the wind in your hair, you've got scenery, oftentimes there's other people out there with you that keeps it exciting. But if you're just sitting in a room on an ergometer, there's really not that much going around. And so mixing it up and say, okay, I'm going to push myself for the next 5 minutes, and then I'll take a minute or two rest and push myself again. It kind of breaks it up and makes it, for me, makes it a little more easier to pass the time. So here we've got okay, looks like we've got one hand raised by Ian. You got a question there, Ian? Or maybe that, yeah, let's. You want to unmute yourself? Oops, I think you're still muted there. I'm not sure if I can. Oh, yeah. Okay, I guess. Okay, maybe you pressed the hand thing by. Okay, I guess we'll get back to the chat here and see. Okay, I think looks like that's most of the questions I see on the chat. Oh, here was one. What was a typical 7-day winter training schedule that you followed when you were competing? And again, the training schedule will depend on how intensely you're training, what you're training for. When I was in my prime training for the Olympics, I was pretty much training 7 days a week. Sometimes I'd take a day off and train 6 days a week, but typically 6 or 7 days a week. One thing with strength training, if you're going to the gym and lifting weights, you do want to allow yourself a minimum of 48 hours recovery between each session. Because what happens is training actually tears your body down. You actually, if you train right afterwards, within the next 6 to 12 hours or even 24 hours, you're actually going to be worse than if you hadn't trained, because the training tears your body down and your body rebuilds itself stronger. And so you do need to give your body a chance to recover between those efforts, especially with something like weightlifting, where you may be heavily stressing those muscles. So the common advice is always give your muscles at least 48 hours recovery time between weightlifting sessions. The only time that's they typically change that, I know the bodybuilders and some of those people will work out every day, but they'll work different parts. They'll do legs one day and back one day and chest another day and mix it up that way. So they always have at least 48 hours for each body part. But for most of us that tend to go into the gym and work all your muscles at once, then you want to give it a good 48 hours before the next one. So that means, and in the off season, I'd be 3 times a week in the gym, giving at least 48 hours between each one. And then I would, depending on where I was, if I was back in Michigan growing up, maybe I'd go cross-country skiing a couple of times and maybe once running, and that would be it. I'd kind of do one workout per day, either gym. Sometimes if I was more serious, I'd do multiples. I'd do gym plus something else. or maybe go to the pool, jump in and swim a bit. But typically 2 to 3 times a week in the gym, and then the other days doing some other sort of activity. And actually, I want to bring up, if I can find it here. Yeah, I'm going to bring up another thing on the screen here to show you. And this is hopefully this will pop up and everybody can see it. This is a little graph I did of training volume, and the training time below on the bottom scale, that's approximately hours per week that you're putting in. And it's sort of arbitrary in that the number of hours you can train per week will vary depending on how intensely you train. If you're training at very, very high intensity, you may only be able to train for 5 or 6 hours at that intensity. If you're training for an ultra endurance event, you may be able to train 20 or 25 hours a week for at a lower intensity. But for most people, they probably tend to peak out at about 10 to 12 hours per week of training. And that's assuming that you have all the time in the world available to train. And when I was training for the Olympics, that was number one on my priority scale. I mean, I worked, I was able to find an employer that'd be flexible with my work schedule. And so I was working 6-hour days instead of 8-hour days. It gave me an extra couple hours of training. And then I could take time off in the summer as I needed to go to events and training camps. And at that time in my life, when I was in my 20s and early 30s, training was number one on my priority list every day. And so I made sure that if I thought it was going to improve my results, I made the time to do the training. And so I found at the level I was training, if you look at that graph, kind of the blue line kind of peaks out around 11 or 12 hours per week. And then beyond that, it actually goes down. Your performance decreases. And that's the region we call overtraining. That if you're training too much or too hard, then your body's not having time to recover, and you're actually doing yourself more harm than good. Now, that being said, you notice that there are 2 lines on there. And if you look at the red line that's up above, you look down where it's 0, the lines are the same. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But then as you get out there above 8 to 10 hours a week training, the red line would be somebody that has trained at a high level for multiple years. And essentially what's happened is you've conditioned your body to be able to withstand a higher training load. So a very highly trained, experienced athlete is able to train at a higher level for more time than somebody that's new to the game or doesn't have as much training experience. I'm actually finding now that during my peak, I was the red line. Now that I found that I'm in my 60s, I'm moving back towards the blue line or maybe even a green line that's even further below and to the left of that one. But it does, it kind of depends on what level you're at of how much time you're able to devote to training. But the thing I want to impart to most people, if you look at that graph, don't think that you have to be putting 10 or 12 hours a week to get effective training. And I think the mistake that people make is they think, well, if I can't put in 10 or 12 hours a week, why even bother? But those lines are relatively vertical early on. So if you put in 3 hours a week, you're actually gaining 60% of the effectiveness. So training is diminishing returns in that a little bit of training gives you huge benefit, and then a little bit more gives you even more benefit. But at some point, the amount of benefit you get from each additional hour or each additional bit of intensity you push, you don't really gain that much more from it. And so, again, when I was training for the Olympics, I was hovering right around that optimal zone, or at least trying to. I'm sure sometimes I was slightly overtraining and possibly at other times a little bit undertraining, but I was trying to maximize every bit. But if you look if you take the blue line at around 12 hours, it hits 100%, but at 8 hours, it's 95%. So you can be training 30% less than a world-class athlete, but you're getting 95% of the benefit. So, and at 5 hours, you're at 80%. So if you go out and, if you put in, if you've only got 5 hours a week, but you actually do that, you put good intensity and you do it every week, it's amazing the kind of gains that you can get. So again, it really depends on, we've all got different lifestyles. Some of us have more time available, some less time. Some of us have jobs where we're working a lot of hours. Some of us have families, kids, whatever, schooling. So the key to this is really figuring out what works for you and finding a training schedule, an amount of training that optimizes the amount of time that you have with how much benefit you can get from it. And really that 4 to 6 hours a week of training is really a sweet spot. You can get a lot of benefit with that amount of training. So, for most people, if you make an effort, you can find 3, 4, 5, or 6 hours a week that you can put into your training, even during the off season, and get something out of it. Okay, let's see what else I got here. Yeah, other just a few other types of exercise you can do. Cycling ergometer. That's that's something that I did. I've done a little bit of that the last couple of years. 2 years ago, I had carpal tunnel surgery, and so I was unable to paddle or do much of anything with my hands bandaged up. I had one wrist done 1 week, and then 2 weeks later I had the other one done. And so I got a bicycle ergometer and put some blocks of foam up in the handlebars, and I was able to rest my forearms on that, and had my bandaged hands there, and it was a way I could keep in shape on the bicycle ergometer. Signed up for a Zwift account, so that's what I did. And another thing about cross training is it's a good thing to do if you're injured. Carpal tunnel surgery, or if you've got a knee injury or any kind of injury, usually you can find some sort of activity, hopefully that does not aggravate your condition. Maybe it's swimming you can do. Maybe it's I know some people that have gotten into paddling because they used to be runners, and their knees or their ankles or their feet can't handle the running distances that they used to be able to do, and so now they're paddling. So certainly cross training is a good way to work around any injuries that you may have, or if you're unable to do a certain sport, then just pick up another one and do that. So I'll put this list back up. Yeah, as I said, there's nothing magic about about these different activities I put up there. You can do anything generally that's either going to require some upper body strength. That's going to build strength. Any activity that does that, going out and chopping wood in the wintertime will build some upper body strength. Or anything that gets you out of breath and works your aerobic system. That could be elliptical trainer, aerobics class, Pilates, anything. If you enjoy it and you're getting feel like you're getting a workout with it, then it's probably going to help your paddling come the main paddling season. So the key with cross training is finding something that you enjoy doing and that you have access to. You're able to do it on a regular basis, and then getting out there and doing it. Hey, and other questions? Yeah.
Greg, Ian wrote down his question in the chat box.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Sorry. What consequence of dropping the volume of training notably in the winter? If I went back fast in July, how much can I slack off in January, December? Yeah, I would say certainly you don't need to train hard year round. And a lot of times actually cutting back in the wintertime is a good thing, because the thing that you want to avoid is burnout. And taking a couple months off and doing nothing, and then coming back and feeling energized, like, gee, I was out on the boat for 2 months and now I'm excited to get back in, or I did nothing for 2 months and now I'm going to start running again, or go back into the gym. That could actually make you better in July, because you're more motivated when you get back into training. Generally, if you can do 2 or 3 days a week in the off season, if you're able to do something, then that's going to help you. So, it's probably best not to take a total vacation from all physical activity, but certainly if you're training anywhere from 4 to 6 days a week in the summertime, and you only train 2 or 3 days a week, maybe even for a shorter time in the winter, I don't think that's going to seriously affect you. Again, it depends on, what level. If you're training for the Olympics and trying to win an Olympic medal, or you're trying to win the surf ski world championships in the open class, something like that, then you're probably going to want to stay in relatively good shape year round. For the rest of us that have, if you've got a real life where you've got work and family and other things, then I think it's quite reasonable to cut back on your training during the winter. Let your body recover, let your mind recover, and then you're going to be more excited when spring hits and you're able to get back out on the water.
Hey, Greg, I've got a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you touched on this a little bit. When we go out and we do a paddle, quite often it's a bit more organized. There's intervals, and you talked about that. But in cross training, it's easy to just go out for a ski or go for a bike ride, maybe a hike. Do you think it's important, if you're going to use those as a cross training opportunity, to kind of try to build in intervals? I'm right now I'm thinking cross country skiing, of course. Build in intervals, so you're doing a couple minutes on with a rest, that kind of a program.
Yeah, when I was cross country skiing, it kind of depends on where you're skiing, but typically the areas I would ski, there was a series of hills, and so those became natural intervals. You work hard on the uphill, and then maybe you rest on the downhill, and then you're going at a more moderate pace in the flats. So that's a very good way to kind of work with the terrain that's out there. So you're kind of getting natural intervals that way. If you're skiing, if you've got a perfectly flat field with absolutely no relief whatsoever, then yeah, probably doing some intervals would help you there. Hiking, that's kind of, you may be hiking uphill and then you're hiking downhill. So, and the other thing too is it's good to mix it up. Typically if I'm going out for a hike, I'm getting good exercise, I'm working my legs, maybe I'm with friends or family, but oftentimes I'm not trying to win a race when I'm doing it. So I'm probably not going to do intervals if I'm out on a hike, unless you're doing it specifically as a training hike. Oftentimes I'll go out hiking for something that's fun to do, and you're trying to get up to a nice viewpoint, and it's maybe not necessarily appropriate to try to do intervals while you're doing that. But if you are really serious about your training and you're going to use a hike as a training session, then sure, if you want to go out and push it hard for a few minutes and then ease off for a couple of minutes, you can do that as well.
Hey, Greg, thank you
Yeah.
very much for doing this. I've got a question. So my specific area of focus is a race called the Alabama 650 in October. Motivation is not an issue ever for me, because I just like being out in the water. I've spent 20 years of whitewater paddling year round. So I live in the South. So it's very fortunate we can paddle year round. What do you recommend for this time of year as far as just, staying in the boat and working on? So I noticed last year when I attempted the 650, I was sick, but B, I really needed to work on bringing my speed up. So I've been going out and concentrating on trying to, stay above 5 miles an hour for 20, 30 minutes an hour, and then back off and do a recovery at 4 miles an hour plus. for 15, 20 minutes and then go back at it at 5 miles an hour plus. Is that something that sounds reasonable for this time of year?
Yeah, I think so, and I think a race like that is really a lot different than most other events that people do. And that for you, high speed, high intensity maybe means going hard for an hour, whereas a lot of people, their whole event only takes an hour or less. so for you, the 1 hour, that's a small percentage of your event that you're doing, and so it's different. But I do think you'd probably do intervals, but extend it, lengthen them out, just like you're doing. Yeah, I think pushing yourself for 20 minutes or an hour or something. I think also when you're training for an event like that, I think it's really helpful to vary the length of your sessions, because you definitely need some long ones in the boat, or at least this is what I found. I did the 70-48 a couple of years ago, which is a 70-mile race. They allow 48 hours to finish it, but I did double ski. We won it in I think it was about 9.5 hours was our time. So it was, not quite 600 miles, but we spent a fair amount of time in the boat. And I found that I'd try to do one really long paddle each week, as it got closer to the race, 4 hours or longer, eventually working up to 6 or 7 hours in my longest one. But then I would also do a 1 hour session and a 2 hour session. And I think that's where, in that 1 hour session, that's when you want to get out there and push yourself and, kind of get your body used to going at a higher intensity. And, then if you're doing on the weekend, you've got the Saturday off. And so you're going to do a long one, maybe you're going to paddle for 6 or 8 hours on that day, and you're not going to push it quite as hard. But, or maybe you're going 12 hours. I don't know how long you're going.
14.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're going 12 to 14 hours, you're probably not going to push it all that hard, or you'll just kill yourself. But certainly, you've done your 12 to 14 hour paddle on the weekend, and maybe take a day off afterwards. And then sometime midweek, you go out and you paddle for an hour. And during that hour, it's a lot higher intensity, and you're going 20% faster than you are in that, in your long session. So I think definitely mixing it up. If you're doing a long event like that, you've got to have those long sessions on the water. But I think you don't want every single one to be that long. That you want to have some shorter ones that you can do at a higher intensity.
Yeah, and I've also learned, my background is I was a semi-professional road cyclist and mountain biker, so I've got that in my back pocket. But I've also found on some days when you're going out and you have the intentions of what you've got to do, and you get out there and your body's just not deliver, just to hang it up and just go out and just do a nice easy paddle, enjoy, look at the scenery, and just relax, but just have that contact with the boat.
Yeah, I think you like you say, you need to listen to your body, and I think I've gotten better at that as I've gotten older, or maybe just my body talks to me more, just telling me when I've overtrained more than when I was younger. But,
gets more vocal as we get older, doesn't it?
Yeah, but certainly, I think if you've really hit it hard several days in a row, and you get out there in the boat and you're just feeling dead, you're probably better either turn around and go back in, or just do an easy, just enjoy the scenery and take it easy. Because if you keep pushing, eventually you're going to hit that overtrain. You're going to crash.
Yep.
And so you really need to balance the amount of training you're doing with giving your body time to recover.
Yeah, I found it's equally important for recovery as it is for pushing those hard extra miles. So thank you very much. This has been very helpful, sir.
Yeah. And one of the things that one thing that's changed from my younger days is certainly the clothing that's available now to people allows you to actually extend your paddling season. So I remember when I was a kid in Michigan, we'd go paddling on this river that had current in it, and so it wouldn't freeze over. Everything was frozen, but this river, unfortunately, this river, I found out because I fell in one day on the day before Christmas, and fortunately, the river's only about chest deep, so you can stand up every place. There really wasn't danger of drowning, but I'd be out there with a cotton sweatshirt and cotton sweatpants, and that's all we had those days. Now with neoprene and wetsuits,
suits.
and dry suits, and all these different things. It does allow you to extend your paddling season. So that's another option is get the proper clothing, and if you want to. And another thing that I'll do is I'll oftentimes say the weather is my coach. So in the wintertime, if we get a nice sunny day, I'm going to go for a paddle, or I'm going to go for a bike ride. I'm going to get outside. Even if I'd planned to go to the gym that day, I will say, well, screw that. The sun's shining, it's warm. I'm not going to sit inside the gym. I'm going to go out and do something outside. And then, 2 days later, when it's pouring down rain and 36 degrees, I'll say, okay, today's my gym day. I don't feel like doing anything outside. So I think you can certainly use the weather as your coach. And another thing to think about is, maybe if you've got a long winter where you live, is planning a spring vacation someplace. So, if you it's cold, then go find a sunny spot that where it is warmer, where you can find a boat and paddle. So that's, I know when I was growing up in Michigan, the same thing. We'd go when I was in high school and in my 20s, we'd go down to Florida for a couple of weeks every spring. So that was sort of you got into the winter, running, skiing, lifting in the gym, and then maybe just starting to warm up a little bit, where you get a little bit on the water. And then we'd go down to Florida and spend a couple of weeks putting a lot of time on the water. And then by the time we got back, the weather was starting to get nicer, and it was able to get out more on the water. But that gave a jump start to the season. So that's certainly something to consider if you can. If you certain time of the year, if you're tired of being cooped inside and not able to get out and do the activity you like, well then go someplace where the weather's more suitable for the activity that you like to do.
Actually, the wintertime's nice. There's a lot less boat traffic out there.
Okay, yeah. So maybe that's your preferred time. It's better in the winter. So, yeah, it's just again, it's just making it fun, and I know I enjoy going different places and paddling in different types of water. So if you get that opportunity.
Can I say something about that picture? That's actually me, and like you were saying, that's Davy Brand's clinic at Oahu. Epic Hawaii does this fantastic clinic where you can go. I think it was 5 days. 5 days.
4 days. For us.
4 days. We paddled twice a day. I would highly recommend it. If you don't mind me plugging him here.
Yeah. So, but that's key is going out and enjoying some place you enjoy going and getting in some good paddling. And in fact, if I can here, I think I'm gonna try to join you, Jeff. See if I can see, where is it here? Someplace there is a. Oh, so maybe I was trying to get the background to change here, but it looks like it's. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, see, I've joined there, Jeff. I'm out there on the beach with you in Hawaii now. So.
Yeah, that's nice. Pass me the sunscreen.
Yeah. So that's.
Got another chat question.
Okay. Yeah. Let's let me look at that and see what's the chat question. Pull up the chats here if I can find it here. Oh, here's one. How does your cross training change when you're training for world championships versus if you don't have a target race as much? And certainly, my training has changed over the years. When I was younger, it was oftentimes number one on my priority list. I trained really hard for it. Now I still enjoy training hard, but certainly I don't train as much as I did, and I don't feel guilty about taking days off. If something comes up, I'm going to go out and do something with my daughter, or some family situation, or I end up working late and miss a session, I don't worry about it as much. So I realize that I just enjoy getting out there when I can. And I still, even now, certain times of the year, I'll have nothing on my calendar coming up, but usually I'll have things as the racing season approaches. You know, I like to go to the Gorge. A couple months ago, I went to Brazil and did that event. So it's always fun to have little events along the way to shoot for. And even when I was in Michigan during my sprint racing career, my primary focus was sprint racing, sprint kayaks, but there weren't many events around. And so, but there were these marathon canoe races, you know, 2-seater canoes. You know, you get a partner, bow and a stern paddle, or you single bladed paddle and switch sides. So within a 3 or 4 hour drive, I could find one of these events every weekend, either Southern Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, someplace in there. And so what I do is I train in my sprint K1 all week, and I'd go off and do one of these marathon canoe races in the weekend. And that really mixed it up for me, that rather than just training day after day after day after day and only having maybe 3 or 4 sprint races a year, nationals and a couple of others, it allowed me to get a race in, you know, pretty much any weekend that I wanted to do a race, I could find one and go do it. It was a little bit different type of paddling, but I found that the training was very similar. Once you learn the technique, the training and the muscle memory really transferred back and forth very easily. And so, you know, the marathon canoeing was kind of a cross training for sprint kayaking and vice versa. So I was able to jump back and forth between the different boats. You know, a lot of you may do different types of paddling. You may do surf ski, you may do outrigger, you may do canoes, whitewater, and certainly there's usually a learning curve once you take up a new discipline. But once you learn the techniques and get decent at it, you'll find that you can jump back and forth between these different disciplines and enjoy it. Okay. Any other questions? See how we're doing here. Happy to stay on as long as we got people with questions. Or if I missed anybody, if anybody raised a hand or a chat that I missed, let me know and I'll try to address it.
I have to leave, but I just wanted to say again, thank you very much, Greg, and thank you very much, Elisa, for setting this up. This has been really, really helpful, and thank you all, and hopefully see you all out on the water.
Okay, yeah. Look forward to seeing you out there.
See you guys.
Just because we have a few people ducking out, I wanted to just make a quick plug that this isn't our last clinic of the winter. We have 3 more coming up. One's December 5th with Wes Hansen, who's an expedition paddler. He's going to talk about planning personal expeditions from really short stuff to really long stuff. Him and his crew just tried to paddle the Northwest Passage. January 14th, we're going to talk about how to build a paddle, what that process looks like, and then let you ask paddle related questions like what size is good, what wing should I be using. And then in March 10th, in time for daylight savings, Bruce Poacher and I are going to chat about how to build an early season training program. So if you are on this and you want to be signed up for any of those, just email the same email address, alessia.favario@epickayaks.com, and I'll get you signed up if you aren't already.
Okay. Okay, yeah, I see one question here. Thoughts of how to find the optimal shaft length, blade size, and stroke rate combination. And yeah, that really, I'm not sure if we still have that on our website. We used to have a paddle wizard on our website. I'm not sure if that's still on there, but if it is, that's a good way. Go on and you put in the types of paddling you do, and it will recommend a blade size and shaft length. And it's also somewhat individual. Certainly depends on your size, but also the type of boat you're paddling, and really finding what works best for you. I know that the trend has definitely been towards smaller blades and shorter paddles, when I was sprint racing, people used very large blades and very long paddles, and the paddlers, the sprint racers these days are using slightly smaller blades and slightly shorter, and they're going faster. So it certainly seems to be working for them. So, but yeah, it really depends on the distance you're paddling, the type of boat you have, and your seat height, a number of things. And yeah, check out. I actually need to go on. I know we had it on our website. I think it's still there, but if you look on our website, there should be a paddle wizard on there that can help at least give you a starting point.
It's still on there. I actually just put the link in the chat box for the person that was asking that question. So
Okay, there we go. Perfect. Okay, if I missed any others or any other questions here before we sign off and let everybody enjoy the long cold winter coming up with all the different cross training you're going to do. Okay, well, thanks everybody. Thanks for tuning in. And as Alessia said, we've got 3 more of these clinics coming up. So be sure to join in on those. And hope you guys enjoy the rest of your Friday evenings and have a good weekend.
Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, Greg.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you.
All right, welcome. Now I'm going to go over here. So hopefully I can stop recording now, and hopefully that's going to save